This is Jerry Coleman, play-by-play voice of the Dothan High Wolves on 96.9 The Legend, and you're tuned into the Phillip Jordan podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Phillip Jordan podcast. I am your host, Phillip Jordan, in-studio host and producer of Dothan Wolves Football on 96.9 The Legend and Auburn Rider for last word on college football. On today's show, we're jumping into the National Football League. We're talking about the New Orleans Saints. In just a few moments, I will be joined by Bob Rose. He is the senior writer over at the Saints News. You can also check him on his podcast, the Bayou Blitz podcast. And we will jump into last week's game against the Eagles, what went wrong there for the Saints. They scored 40-plus points against the Panthers and the Cowboys, but then just scored 12 points there in the loss to the Eagles. We'll look at, they've given up a lot of yardage the last 2 weeks. The Cowboys in a win, Eagles in a loss. Is that concerning with the defense, according to Bob? And also we'll look at Klint Kubiak, the new offensive coordinator. How has he changed things offensively for the Saints? Of course, we'll preview this Sunday's matchup with the Falcons. But before we do all that, let you guys know, find me in the podcast. Find me on social media at PJordan SEC. The podcast available on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review. I will read it on a future edition of the show. You can check the show out over on YouTube at the Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel. Also, check out the show over at Wiregrass Daily News. Now I'm going to play my conversation I had with Bob Rose, who is the senior writer over at the Saints News. High school football season, and that means the Dothan Wolves are back on 96.9 The Legend. Every Thursday night, check out the Jed Kennedy Coaches Show with Jerry Coleman and Ken Lambert as they sit down with Dothan Wolves head coach Jed Kennedy about the previous game and preview the upcoming opponent. If you missed the Jed Kennedy Coaches Show, you can check out the podcast at wiregrassdailynews.com or go to your favorite podcast catcher and just type in Dothan High School Football. And, of course, every Friday night, pregame starts at 6:45 and kickoff is at 7 for all the Dothan Wolves football action. Everybody joining me on the show today. We're jumping into the National Football League, the New Orleans Saints, and joining me to break down the 2-1 Saints is Bob Rose. He is the senior writer over at the Saints News. Also, check him out on the podcast, the Bayou Blitz podcast. And Bob, I appreciate you taking some time out, come on the show and talk about the Saints.
Oh, listen, I appreciate you having me. It's my pleasure to join you. Hope you all are staying safe down there, staying as dry as you can, and definitely as safe as possible.
Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, New Orleans has had their fair share of hits with this stuff. So I know you guys, everybody in New Orleans is always understanding and knows what's going on when it comes to these storms this time of year and all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I mean, I'm based up in Pittsburgh, but I've been to New Orleans several times. Obviously, have been in 5 hurricanes in my life, and no real rush to be in a 6th.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Talk about the Saints. I'll ask you this about the game with the Eagles. Going into it, the Saints had scored 47 against the Panthers. They had scored 44 against the Cowboys. Did you have a 15-12 defeat on your bingo card for this past Sunday?
No, I absolutely did not. I didn't think the Saints would put up another 40 number because I acknowledged in my articles and on my show in the week leading up to Philadelphia game. Eagles have a lot of defensive talent on paper, as much talent as almost anyone in the National Football League. But they hadn't played up to that potential. Unfortunately for the Saints, they chose Sunday to really turn that switch on. Listen, I know the Saints could have and should have played better offensively. There's a lot of fingers of blame, to go around. But the Eagles just flat out outplayed them. Manhandled them at the line of scrimmage. Once they took Shaheed away completely. They contained Olave and limited Kamara as a pass catcher. And once you do that, one of the biggest weaknesses on this Saints team is the lack of pass catching depth. Juwan Johnson and none of those other wide receivers were able to step up, and you weren't able to control the line of scrimmage with your line, who was also beaten up. Once those two things happen, that's game, set, and match.
I know, and through three quarters, I mean, it was 3-0 going into the fourth quarter. I was watching this game on Sunday, hanging out with family and everything. I was like, what's going on here? I was expecting more fireworks, but I'll ask you this. I'm just kind of watching it, and I know in the first half, the Eagles did turn the ball over twice. Now, I know the turnovers happened, on New Orleans side of the field, but still there were some opportunities there. In the second half, you had the block punt. Did you kind of see it that way too? Like, there were opportunities in this game, especially through those first three quarters, that maybe the Saints could have put some more points up on the board and created some distance before, Saquon Barkley just decided to go off there in the fourth quarter.
Oh, gosh, yeah, there were opportunities. I mean, you mentioned the two turnovers and the block punt. They also forced two turnovers on downs, from Philadelphia in their territory. And the Eagles also missed a field goal, albeit a 60-yarder, which, I mean, hey, that puts you in great field position. And, the Saints could not capitalize. So the opportunities were there. Like you said, the defense gave up a lot of yards, especially in the second half. Some key breakdowns that led directly to the loss. But for the most part, if you as a defense keep the other team off the scoreboard, regardless of how you do it, if you keep the other team from putting points up, you've done your job. It was the offense that for the most part didn't do theirs. So I expect both sides of the ball to go back to the drawing board. Because even defensively, you could not stop Dallas Goedert. And I'm a big fan of Goedert as a player, but listen, he's not the Hall of Famer that the Saints defense made him look like. I love Saquon Barkley too, but you just can't let a back, no matter how good a back you're facing, you can't let a back go off on you like that. So the offense obviously has to go back to the drawing board this week, but the defense has to make some key adjustments as well.
Yeah, and you're looking at the last two games, because against the Cowboys, Dak Prescott almost had 300 yards passing. So the Cowboys moved the ball in the game; they just could not put it in the end zone. We just look at the score, 44-19. It's okay. The Saints must have just dominated all facets, but at the end of the day, the Cowboys did move the ball, just couldn't put it in the end zone, and then we saw that here with the Eagles. How concerning do you think that is for the Saints moving forward?
Yeah, it is a little bit concerning because, I mean, to your point, this went lost on a lot of the fans, especially because of the nature of the score against the Cowboys. But Dallas moved the ball well enough to put 4 field goals on the board. And they also had a couple turnovers and a turnover on downs in New Orleans territory. So Dennis Allen and Joe Woods, that defensive staff, has to be looking at this game as well as the Eagles game. You need to be more concerned about the offense after Philadelphia, but defensively there's some concerns here too. The secondary, who I believe the cornerback unit's the best in the NFL. They need to tighten up their coverage. They're making plays, but they need to do better as far as ball denial, shutting down opposing targets. The linebackers, even Demario Davis, they're playing, in my view, a little bit below what I expected. Not poorly. I just expected more from the unit. The defensive line, I think, is actually playing pretty well. They're getting pressure on the quarterback. They're just not finishing plays, and that's why Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts were able to make a few of the passes that they were. It's great to hurry pressure a quarterback, hurry him into rush throws. But when you have an opportunity to get a sack, you got to get that quarterback on the ground.
I mentioned there too in Saquon Barkley. I mean, they did a really good job for 3 quarters against him. I felt like. Then all of a sudden, the fourth quarter, and look, when he gets loose and he's gone. I mean, just the talent that he is. Did you see the Eagles do anything differently, or was it just the Saints weren't doing what they were doing earlier?
What happened from New Orleans schematically? They just got gassed. They were on the field for the entire second quarter, most of the third quarter. So fatigue does strange things to us all. But as far as the adjustments that Philadelphia made, New Orleans was so concerned about both Barkley and Jalen Hurts beating them on the outside and on the edge with their legs. And, that's what Philadelphia attempted to do for the most part in the first half. And, New Orleans shut it down, like you said. In the second half, Hurts wasn't asked to run nearly as often, and they were running inside on New Orleans, either straight at those defensive tackles and linebackers, between the tackles, or starting off with Saquon Barkley off tackle and then just using his tremendous cutback ability to cut it back inside. And, New Orleans didn't have any answers for it. And especially once your legs start to go, you're kind of easy to push around. That's what I saw happening in the second half against the rushing attack of the Eagles.
Look, I'll be honest. I'm not by no means an Eagles fan, but there's a little bit. I was a little happy. I have Saquon on my fantasy team, so I was rooting at the end. I was like, "Come on, Derek Carr, pull it out," because I did pick them to win the game too. The Saints, but at the end, that was kind of like not a great decision by Carr. I think at the end, of course, Greg Olson brought it up in the broadcast. I mean, you didn't have to go for that pass at that moment. It kind of felt like a forced play from Derek Carr at the end. It kind of sealed the deal.
Yeah, I agree with that. And listen, Derek's been making some good decisions with the football over the first 2 games, and even throughout most of the Philadelphia game, he wasn't throwing the ball into harm's way. But that throw there, and the pressure was almost immediately on him. So I don't blame him entirely. You got to protect your quarterback better than that. If Derek would have been able to hold on to the ball longer, the route was there. If another half second was allowed to develop, but outside of that. You're right. You can't throw that football at that particular time. He did have a receiver on the backside coming open. Again, you needed more time, about another second for that to develop, and it wasn't there. So in that position, I mean, it's not like you're talking about a 4th down play here. You throw the ball away, live to fight another down. All you needed was a field goal to keep that game going. So I agree with you. It was an unnecessary chance, but Derek hasn't taken a lot of those this year yet.
Yeah, that's the whole thing with quarterbacks. We all, especially like when you watch a game in the moment, you say, okay, he shouldn't have thrown that pass. But then when you go back and look at it, you can see, okay, maybe the receiver didn't run the right route. Or like you said, there was pressure that came earlier than what you were expecting, and you got a rush to throw. So, we always look at the quarterback numbers and these interceptions. How many interceptions does the quarterback throw today? But sometimes I think we do need to, in all these quarterbacks, look kind of deeper into it. Say, what happened? Why did that happen? Because it's not always the quarterback's fault.
Yeah, I completely agree. And 9 times out of 10 is because of pressure up front. That the quarterback either has to get the ball away earlier than he wants to, earlier than the play is designed to, or just the throw and or the footwork are altered. That's why inside pressure especially is so important. Because you get that, and that doesn't allow that quarterback to step up into his throw. The velocity's off. Maybe it causes it to sail a little bit. A lot of the New Orleans interceptions that secondary has gotten so far has been because of the pressure that we just talked about. Yeah, again, you want to and you need to get the quarterback on the ground, but if you force them into bad throws, that's nearly as effective.
Yeah, I've always felt like sacks are an overrated stat. It's just getting quarterback pressure. That's really the key on that. But talk about this team overall the first 3 games, and you can tell a difference in this offense with the Saints, with Klint Kubiak coming in. And just Carr's throwing the ball down the field a lot more than what we're used to. And just, especially those first 2 games, the offense was just about unstoppable against Carolina, against Dallas. Watching this team versus what they've been in the past couple of years with Derek Carr quarterback, what's the biggest difference you've seen?
They're using a lot more motion than they have in the past, and that's one of the staples of the Klint Kubiak system. One of the many reasons why I love this hire when they made it back at the end of after last season ended. But you're using a lot of motion, a lot of different formations, even with the same personnel. You don't always need a different personnel grouping. You just come at the defense with different formations, and what that's doing, that's finding the best possible one-on-one or isolation matchups for your top weapons. That's what this system has always done, dating all the way back to Gary Kubiak and Mike Shanahan with the Denver Broncos in the early 90s. So having said that, I was still a little bit surprised at how quickly the New Orleans personnel embrace that system and seem to feel very comfortable with it from the onset. I thought that there'd be some growing pains, and I still believe we've only seen the tip of the first few pages of Klint Kubiak's playbook. I think we're going to see a lot more. And the offensive line too. In the first two games, not against Philadelphia, but in those first two games, the offensive line exceeded everybody's expectations. It's still a worry. The unit itself is still a worry for me going forward. Now you add injuries into the equation. But the matchups that these players, Fuaga, Penning, Lucas Patrick, especially basically the three newcomers. I say Penning is a newcomer because he's in a new position. They're the ones who especially have exceeded everybody's expectations. And if you can block, if you can establish the run, another staple of this Kubiak attack, it keeps the defense from stacking the box and allows you those shots over the top that you mentioned Carr has been able to take, with Rashid Shaheed, or when defenses adjust to that opens up your middle for those crossers from Chris Olave. So the system itself creates so many ways to beat an opponent, and New Orleans, took advantage of that over those first 2 weeks.
So now, obviously, we're talking on a Thursday, and it's come out on a Friday. So we turned the page to the Atlanta Falcons. I'll say this: I think this is one of the most underrated rivalries in the NFL. It's always a fun matchup. Of course, being in Alabama where I'm at, we get Falcon games on Fox. That's the games we're going to get, and then we get the Saint games too. And I obviously date back to Drew Brees versus Matt Ryan. Those were always really good games. I felt like they always came down to the fourth quarter overtime when you had those two quarterbacks. Is there and I didn't prep you for this. If you can't think of one, it's fine. But is there a matchup or a game from this rivalry that when you think about these two teams that really sticks out to you?
I'm a tiny bit older than you, man. So so I date back to the Archie Manning versus Steve Bartkowski days.
Okay.
The matchup the two matchups that jump out in my mind when I think of the rivalry are that painful playoff loss at home, to the Atlanta Falcons after the 1991 season. It was actually the 91 wild card game. One of the most painful losses, in Saints history, in my opinion. And then, the memory that always brings a smile to my face is the 2011 game in the Superdome that Monday night, when Drew Brees just ripped apart the Atlanta defense, one of many, many times that he did that. But on this particular night, he just so happened to break a 27-year-old NFL record in passing, Dan Marino for the most passing yards in a season, with a touchdown pass to Darren Sproles. But that 2011 team was so fun to watch. This rivalry is so fun to watch. It's ulcer-inducing, when you watch the games itself. But you can never say that a Saints-Falcons game is not entertaining in some way, shape, or form. And so many things have been, so many unexpected things have happened throughout the decades of this rivalry. And hey, you're right, it's underrated. You can't get any closer than 55 versus 55, which is what each team's victory total in this all-time series. 28-27, the Saints have the edge at home. 28-27, the Falcons have the edge at home. A one-game difference in your home stands. Yeah, you don't get much closer than that.
We never have to worry about weather with these two teams because both play indoors too. That's always a good thing too. And you look at this matchup too between these two teams. Of course, Atlanta's 1-2 I'll just say they played horrible against the Steelers. I mean, they could not do anything offensively. And then, of course, they win their next game. Then they get beat by the Chiefs. They had that great comeback against the Eagles in that second game of the year. Kirk Cousins seems a little limited to me. He's been sacked 5 times, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. They like to run the ball too, as does New Orleans. You look at this matchup. What are going to be some keys for New Orleans going up against Atlanta?
You look at what the New Orleans defense struggled with last week. A dynamic running back who can beat you in multiple ways with Saquon Barkley. What do you got this week? A dynamic running back who can beat you in multiple ways with Bijan Robinson. Saints struggled against an athletic downfield tight end in Dallas Goedert. This week, you got Kyle Pitts. So you have to find ways to contain them. You cannot let Atlanta establish the run. I know they want to pass the ball with Kirk Cousins, but they also recognize that Bijan Robinson is their best weapon. So you have to take that away from them. you're not going to completely stop a back the caliber of Robinson, but you can contain him. You can make Atlanta feel like, okay, we're not going to win this game solely on the strength of our running attack. We're going to have to put it on Kirk Cousins a little bit. Kirk Cousins is no Jalen Hurts. He was never going to, he's never been able to beat too many people in a foot race. And, his mobility now coming off of that Achilles injury looks so much worse. I mean, I've watched all 3 Falcons games, in depth, and, Kirk's footwork looks a little bit off. He still doesn't look right, but that's a stationary target. You got to get to him, especially in his face, make him feel like he cannot hold on to the ball long enough to for those routes to Darnell Mooney and Drake London to develop. And everybody talks about the Saints offensive line injuries. It's looking like the Falcons are going to be without 2 starters on their line as well. Drew Dahlman, the center, already on injured reserve. Caleb McGarry, the right tackle, probably not going to be able to play with the knee injury. So we just talked in the last segment about the Saints defensive line. While they played well, they've only been so-so at finishing plays. You got to finish in this one. Get Robinson to the ground. Hit him at the line of scrimmage. Make Kirk unable to set up or wait for those routes to develop, and take away his best weapons. Take away, contain, limit Bijan Robinson, contain, limit Kyle Pitts. The matchup on paper, I think, favors the Saints very heavily, but that defense is, that defense is going to have to stop with the bend and break stuff, and just, force some 3 and outs, give some better field position advantage to your offense. Offensively, the Saints going to be without Eric McCoy, looking like you're going to get Taysom Hill back. And Taysom Hill has been a Falcons killer throughout his career. So we talked before about, not really having any established weapons outside of Olave, Kamara, Shaheed. With Taysom, you do. And as good as that offense played in the first 2 weeks, Taysom Hill didn't get a lot of touches. If he's healthy, I would look for a heavier dose of Taysom Hill this game. Make Atlanta adjust to where he is in the formation. And again, the Kubiak system has always been masterful at isolating the best matchups for your top weapons. So if Atlanta adjusts to Taysom Hill, who is going to be left open? Is it going to be Kamara as a receiver? And he certainly needs to get more involved that way. Is it going to be Shaheed on the 2nd and 3rd levels? Is it going to be Olave? How are you going to attack Atlanta's defense? I want to see a lot more different formations than what we saw against Philadelphia. Yeah, I know you had 0 confidence in your blocking against the Eagles, especially in those last 3 quarters. But you've had a whole week to adjust to life without Eric McCoy. So whoever's going to play that center spot, probably Lucas Patrick, has had a week to get used to the position. So there's no reason why you can't come in with a more complex game plan to get that Falcons defense, who has played a lot better than what I thought it would, to open the year.
Yeah, they did a good job of against the Chiefs, limiting what the Chiefs were able to do offensively this past Sunday night. So just couldn't come out and win on that one. So it's going to be fun. As I told you, this is one of my favorite games to watch. Whenever I'm glad they play twice a year, and maybe we can luck out and get to another one in the playoffs. Who knows? But Bob, it's been fun having you on, talking all things Saints with you. Appreciate you coming on the show. If the listeners, viewers want to check it online, where can they find you?
And I appreciate you having me on. Again, you guys stay safe down there. Stay out of harm's way. Don't take any unnecessary chances. But yeah, I'm hoping we'll be able to talk again down the road. You know how to get a hold of me. And folks, you can follow my work. I'm on Facebook, Bob Rose. Pretty simple. I'm on Twitter, X Twitter, whatever you want to call it these days, at Bobby R 2613. I do publish all of my articles on my personal pages, but you can also check out myself, John Hendricks, and Kyle T. Mosley on the Saints News Network. We post all of our shows as well. Second and Saints from Mr. Hendricks, Bayou Blitz from myself. We do a weekly broadcast of that, as well as a live pregame show and a taped postgame show. So it's pretty hard to miss me.
Everybody go check them out. If you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, wherever you're watching, Bob's handle is up there on the screen, and the name of the site, the Saints News Network. But anyways, Bob, appreciate you coming on the show, and I hope we can do this again sometime down the road.
Anytime, my friend. It's my pleasure. Stay safe. We'll talk soon.
96.9 The Legend is your connection to classic country legends. But Digio Strategies has other options too. News Talk 103.9 is your source for America's top news and entertainment shows. Like Rick and Bubba in the morning, Glenn Beck from 9 till 11 a.m., and Clay Travis and Buck Sexton middays from 11 a.m. till 2 p.m. Sean Hannity, Lars Larson, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, and others fill your day with the latest news and views from America's top conservative voices. America at Night and Coast to Coast AM keep you company and connected throughout the night. Plus, Fox News, the Alabama Radio Network, and Wiregrass Daily News keep you informed with national, international, state, and local news. And with more musical choices like All the Hits, 106.7 KMX, Today's Country 95.5 WTVY, and Music 107.7. Digio Strategies gives you more choices and more variety. Listen on air, online, and on our apps. 96.9 The Legend is just the beginning.
All right, and once again, thanks to Bob Rose for coming on the show. I'll talk to him about the Saints, and we'll try to get him on at some other time down the road. Now, on Thursday night, recording this part of the podcast after Thursday Night Football, the Cowboys defeat the Giants 20-15 to go to 2-2 on the year. They snapped their two-game losing streak after starting 1-0 after a dominant performance against the Browns. The Giants played well. They just couldn't score touchdowns. They could not finish drives. 5 field goals by Greg Joseph. They were 0-2 in the red zone. First downs, the Giants won that battle 16-14. Total yards, 303 to 293. Passing yards, 277 to 213. Now, the running game was in favor of Dallas, 80-26. And that was a big part of this, too, as well, because the last few weeks, it really seemed like Dallas has really been manhandled up front with the Saints, and this past week by the Ravens. Much, much better in this performance by the Cowboy defense. Did see Micah Parsons go off the field injured, but to see what happens there. CeeDee Lamb for the Cowboys had a good game, 7 catches, 98 yards, 1 touchdown. Malik Neighbors for the Giants, rookie wide receiver, 12 catches, 115 yards. He did get concussion there at the end, so that's another we'll check on. But it's with the Giants here, if you just finish a couple of these drives that you obviously moved the ball, you win this game. It's just they could not finish off drives, and you got to wonder 1-3. This losing keeps going the way for the Giants. What's going to be the future for Brian DeBall there with the Giants? But the Cowboys get to 2-2 on the year. Just real quickly looking through the rest of the matchups for Week 4 in the National Football League. As we were talking with Bob, 2-1 Saints at 1-2 Falcons. The Falcons are a 2.5-point favorite in this one. The over/under is 42.5. I'm going with the Saints in this one, going with the underdog. The Rams will be playing the Bears. Chicago is a 3-point favorite in this one. Of course, we know the injury situation there with the Rams at wide receiver. I am going to go with the Rams, though, to win this one. Upset again. The Vikings are playing the Packers. Vikings have played really well. 3-1 defense is really good. Sam Darnold has played great. Now, he's been a little banged up. And, of course, Aaron Jones is making his return to Green Bay. Again, Packers, they are a 3-point favorite. I'm going to go with the home team, the Packers. Jordan Love could be returning in this one. 3-0 Steelers at 1-2 Colts. The Steelers defense played great, and the offense hasn't had to do a lot. I just think they need to continue going with Justin Fields as long as they're winning. Steelers are a 1.5-point favorite. I'm going to take the Steelers. That defense will be all over Anthony Richardson. You'll have the Broncos at 1-2 at the 2-1 Jets. Aaron Rodgers played really well in the last game. Their 24-3 win over the Patriots. This will be a little bit tougher. Broncos defense, we'll see what happens, but the Jets defense is good too. I think Aaron Rodgers has another good game here. The Jets are a 7.5-point favorite here. I'm going with the Jets. The Eagles will be playing the Buccaneers. The Eagles are a 2-point favorite. This one, the Eagles get a win. As we mentioned, their defense played great there against the Saints. Buccaneers coming off a loss too. I'm going to go with the Eagles in this one. The Cincinnati Bengals will be going to the Carolina Panthers. Andy Dalton played really good for the Panthers last week after the benching of Bryce Young. But the Bengals are 0-3. They know they need a win. They had a tough one on Monday night, losing 38-33 to the Commanders. Jaden Daniels, man, he had a tremendous performance in that one. I'm going to go with Cincinnati to get the win here against the Panthers. The Jacksonville Jaguars at 0-3 will be at the 2-1 Texans. Houston is a 6-point favorite. I just don't like Jacksonville's vibe right now. I'm going to go with the Texans. The Washington Commanders will be playing the Arizona Cardinals. Not both. The Commanders are 2-1. The Cardinals are 1-2. So can Jaden Daniels put on another really good performance here? Arizona's 3.5-point favorites, but I think the Commanders are going to keep that momentum going. The New England Patriots at 1-2 will be at the 1-2 49ers. The 49ers 2-point favorite. It's like these are two 1-2 teams, but we know they're not the same in any way. Give me the 49ers in this one. The Browns at the Raiders are kind of going to be interesting with Coach Pierce, some stuff he had to say about some of his players going for business for themselves this past week. The Browns, both these two teams, I don't think either two these teams are really all that good. The Raiders are 2.5. I like the Browns defense. I go with the Browns. The Chiefs will be at the Chargers. Of course, the storyline and talk of the health of Justin Herbert. The Chiefs just keep finding ways to win. They're 3-0. Chargers 2-1. Chiefs are 7-point favorite. Give me the Chiefs in this one. The Buffalo Bills will be at the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday Night Football. The Bills are playing great at 3-0. The Ravens 1-2. They're a really good team. They should be 2-1. They could be 3-0. Just a little bit closer there in that open on the touchdown that was not. Give me the Ravens to get to 2-2 and snap the Bills' undefeated streak to start the year. Titans at the Dolphins, the battle of Will Levis and whoever the Miami Dolphins backup quarterback is. Miami's 1-point favorite. Will Levis will find a way to lose it. Give me the Dolphins. And then the Seahawks at 3-0 are playing the 2-1 Lions. Give me the Lions on this one. I just think they're better. And that are my picks for the NFL weekend. And that's going to do it for the show. We'll be back next week with some more podcasts, more audio content, and, of course, we'll have the Wiregrass High School Football Report. The Dustin Wolves will be back in action next week, too, as well. All right, guys, I appreciate you checking it out. Again, recording this Thursday night. The weather seems to be moving out of the Dothan area, but if you're still in Georgia, Florida, listen to this. I hope everybody was safe on Thursday evening through the storm is kind of making its way through. So just hope everybody's good on that. I hope everybody stays safe. Remember, you can follow all my stuff at pjordansec. Email me at sports.philjordan@gmail.com. Hope everybody has a great dry weekend. Till next time. Bye-bye.